so we're going to jump right ahead into here.
Okay.
Right. So, this is questions for your childhood. That's what we're starting with.
Okay.
Alright, first question. What was a typical day like when you were a kid?
Wow. I don't remember. That's the answer to that question. Because I was a child. My memory is terrible now, and it was even worse then.
Well, if you can remember, what was school like? Just like a typical like class.
Well, the very first class was the kindergarten.
And what did you do? Did you do projects? Did you learn math? Did you...
Yeah, it was... very basic math.
Yeah, like plus.
Yeah, 1 plus 1 was 2.
Yeah, things like that.
And 2 plus 2 was 4.
Yeah, so simple math like that. Alright, what did you do after school? Like where did you go, or...
Well, I was very interested in the garden, where we raised vegetables. Like tomatoes and carrots and spinach and so in fact there's a picture of me at age 4 that shows me hoeing in the garden.
So I guess you just went to the garden after school. Alright, so next question. What were your siblings like?
Well, I had a sister that was almost a little less than 2 years older than me. And she always helped me on all kinds of things. We were very close. And had a brother that
Frank
was 4 years older than me. And he was protection from the bullies in the neighborhood.
So I see that your younger sister would help you with,
Well, she was protection too. She was.
But what specifically would she help you with?
Yeah, she helped me at mealtime quite a bit. And the older brother was not very helpful.
he would just stand up to bullies who were trying to hey kid, give me your lunch. And your brother would always protect you from those bullies.
Yeah, but my sister did more protection than my brother.
Because
anyway.
protection is kind of helpful, and you said he wasn't very helpful. And so, last question for the childhood. What was your favorite place to go as a kid? Like a favorite restaurant or like a favorite shop?
Yeah, movies.
Movie theater?
Yeah. There weren't many, but
you still like to go there?
Yeah. And we played in the driveway quite a bit. It was a wide driveway.
Would you
So.
One question. Was chalk a thing?
The what?
Chalk.
Oh yeah, we
You
worked
use
with
chalk.
chalk.
You use chalk in the driveway because I
Yeah.
didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
make it awkward when I said,
Yeah.
"Did you do chalk drawings?" And
Oh yeah.
what's chalk? All right.
My sister was very good at drawing, and I was pretty good too.
Like more or less. Alright, so next stage, a teenager.
Wow, that's a big jump.
First question.
Yeah.
What was it like to start driving, like when you were 16? Because I understand cars were a lot different back then.
Yeah. We always had two cars because my dad worked for the Chrysler Corporation. And I was allowed to drive around the neighborhood a little bit when I was 15, 16, something like that. And then if I had my mother with me, I could drive to the store.
Like if you had like one of your parents with you?
Yeah.
Or like someone older than you?
Yeah, right. So.
Alright, next question on teenager. What was a typical day in middle school and or high school like?
Wow.
Just like think of like a class or like what your friends
Yeah.
were like.
It was a big high school. Like 700 in my class. In my freshman year, there were like 700 kids.
Oh yeah, I forgot. School was different. School was very different back then.
Yeah, each class was in a different room, a different teacher.
Yeah.
For each type of like math was in one room with a teacher, and then typically they were an hour long, and at the end of the hour we would get up and practically run to the next class.
But
that could be English, or something.
How many classes do you think you had?
About 7, something like that.
I only have 2. I have math and science. I have math, my math and science homeroom, and then I have my reading and writing other teacher.
That's pretty close to what we had.
Another question. What was your favorite subject in middle school and or high school?
Science. Yeah.
Yeah, I probably guessed that one.
Sometimes the teacher would ask me to explain an item that the kids didn't understand, so I would sort of help her teach class in science.
So, next question. What did you do after you graduated from high school? Like, I'm not talking about like college or when you joined the army.
I always had a job.
You had a job.
Numerous jobs. I sold magazines, door to door. And I could keep or spend the money that I earned with that job. I also had a newspaper route. Had like 30 customers, 40 customers.
Because I know that I know that like $10 would give you like a lifetime supply of food, because things were really cheap back in the day. I understand. Like,
oh yeah,
if you had like $1, you would be like the coolest kid in school.
well, it wasn't quite that bad, but it was $1 would buy a lot.
Yeah.
And yeah. So it was, the halls were like just crowded. 700 students in just the freshman year. Yeah. So you're always passing, trying to get to the next class, and I got to know almost all of the people in the class. So you'd always be saying, "Hi, Joe. Hi, Helen." And as we were crowded in the hallways, getting to the next class.
All right. So next question. Now this is in the next stage, adult.
Oh wow.
So.
There's a lot of in between. Depending on what age you consider an adult.
Well, I mean like after 18. But okay, so
okay.
First question.
I was in high school till I was 16 or 17.
Well, whenever you like whenever you considered yourself an adult, or like
well,
when
I didn't
you
consider
moved
myself
out,
adult until I went to college.
like when you moved out or something like that. So, how did you end up in Texas? Because I understand that you lived in New York, and how did you end up in Texas?
In my senior year of high school, I had to apply to college. And I applied to Lehigh University in Pennsylvania, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And so and that of course was after my senior year in high school. I graduated from high school. I was 17 probably. This summer I graduated. I graduated in June of the year was 1951, when I graduated from high school. Then I was always short on money, so most of the time I think my parents took me there. You have to go across New Jersey and into Pennsylvania to get to school. They probably took me up there with my bag of clothes, and had to buy my books. And that was a madhouse because all the other freshmen at Lehigh University they were all buying books too, so the bookstore was really crowded.
And then how did you go from Pennsylvania to Texas?
Well, first I had to get home. I tried to get home. I had to buy food. They had a cafeteria and on the campus, and I mostly ate. The only meal I ate there was lunch, and the rest of the food I bought in the local stores in Bethlehem. And kept it, of course, it's fairly cool up there, so I had a box where I kept my cold food, like milk. Had to there was a level spot right outside my window in the dormitory. I slept in a dormitory for first year, freshman year, and I had a cooler out on this flat spot outside because it was cool, you know. Up there, first freeze was around October, and so if I kept it in this, kept the food out there, it stayed cool, didn't spoil. So 4 years at Lehigh, where I got a BS, Bachelor of Science, in chemical engineering. And in my junior year, I started applying to companies, to work for companies. And I applied to about 5 different companies. And one of them was Shell Oil, Shell Chemical. And that's the one. I guess I applied for about 3 different jobs, 3 different companies, and one was Shell, and that's the one in my senior year that I picked. And there, me and a classmate applied to Shell, and that's the one we got invited in my senior year to visit. And Shell had an office in the Chrysler Building, and so I visited their office, and they interviewed me, and I interviewed them, and so I accepted their offer, which was $400 a month. I remember that.
Wait, so what I'm understanding is that how you got into Texas was that there was like some sort of Shell office in Texas that you went to?
A refinery.
Oh.
They make gasoline and all different petroleum products.
And you moved there?
And then, in July of my senior year, I graduated with a BS in chemical engineering. So, and they had a refinery and chemical plant there, and it's still there. And so in July of 1955, I took a train to Chicago from New York to Chicago, and had to get to New York. I took the bus to get to New York, and then hitchhiked from the Holland Tunnel to Chicago. And of course, you know, that was very common to hitchhike in those days. It's a little dangerous today. So when I took the train from New York to Chicago, and then hitchhiked from Chicago to Houston over a period of 2 days.
Wow. So you ended up in Houston, which is in Texas, and that's how you got in Texas?
Yep. Houston, Texas. The refinery is just like it is now in Deer Park. Have you ever been to Deer Park?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But I have been to Houston.
Yeah, you've been to Houston. But Houston, Deer Park is on the east side of Houston.
So, next question.
Yeah.
What did you do in college? Like, did you do science? Did you do chemistry? What did you do?
In college?
Yes, in college.
Yeah. I had a specific area of study would be chemical engineering, which is a mixture of chemistry, that is, and physics, and English, and math.
A lot of the stuff I'd expect you to do in college.
Yeah. If you get into a technical field, those are what your main subjects will be.
So, next question.
Yeah.
What was the Army like?
Well, that's interesting in that whatever the Army could be, my brother was in the Navy when he graduated. You have to put in a certain amount of time with the military when you graduate. That's the way it was at that time, and it's pretty much similar to that today. So my particular field in the military was Army Ordnance. And Army Ordnance is you study and actually practice using assorted guns and vehicles like jeeps and tanks, and you have to study how to maintain it. And I did that in a 6-month stay at Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland. And you've probably been to Maryland, I think. You maybe don't remember it because it's just another state up there in the Northeast.
So that's where you went to the Army?
Yeah.
In Maryland? Because that was my next question, actually.
Oh, okay.
Where did you go in the Army? So yeah. I'm glad you told me that.
So, and then we shot, they had they call it the Aberdeen Proving Grounds. And the reason they call it that is that's where when the manufacturer makes a Jeep or a tank, it gets sent to Aberdeen Proving Ground to make sure that it's, a good piece of equipment. And so a lot of the time was spent actually shooting the brand new guns and proving that they work, before it's sent to a camp somewhere in the U.S. normally. and some army young army recruits are from there are sent to all around the world to various military posts, and I was sent to it could be somewhere in the world, or it could be in a camp in the United States. And I was sent to a military post in Louisiana. And I spent 6 months there. It was supposed to be 2 years. That's what the obligation was. But they had so many. My rank was second lieutenant, and they would do. It was the post in Louisiana that I was assigned to was one that repaired military vehicles, jeeps, tanks, trucks, all military type vehicles. And I was supposed to spend 2 years there. That's when I thought, when I got there, I thought I'd be there for 2 years. Well, the Vietnam War was starting to get pretty active, and they said I might be sent to Vietnam to train Vietnamese troops. And but as time went on in that 6 months period in Fort Polk, Louisiana, just about halfway up the state, going from the south to the north, it'd be about in the middle, almost the middle of the state. And when I was a couple of months from my 6-month tour there, they had already sent a whole bunch of second lieutenants to a training school to learn how to train Vietnamese soldiers, and the ones that were on our side. And so they said, well, we got too many second lieutenants here to train. They already had too many to train. So they said, we're going to give you an offer where you can cut your obligation from 2 years to 6 months.
And you...
I took that.
Because you didn't want to stay
there. Well, yeah, it was just supposed to be training, see. But within another 6 months went by, I was back at Shell then, see. It became, in other words, the guys that were doing the trading were actually ended up doing the fighting too. They were second lieutenants leading a platoon of U.S. and Vietnamese soldiers. So, in other words, the war got hot quick. And but Shell wanted me back, you know. They were giving me a little bit of money to get back, and of course they said if you get back sooner, you're going to get more money, you know. So I took the job to get back, back to Shell. So, and at Shell, when I got back there, I was doing all kinds of technical work, a lot of reports, and I worked in the lab full time, which was, I had been trained to work in a lab already. Of course, I had one class at Lehigh was, of course, a lot of chemistry courses at Lehigh, and so I was pretty familiar with lab procedures and chemistry, and so that's where they put me. Shell put me when I came back. I was there 4 years in the labs, so.
I think that's a good place to stop on that question.
Okay.
And now, here's the next question I have for you. Did you go to college, then join the Army, or did you do the opposite?
Well, it's kind of even at Lehigh, I had a military class where they taught me the basics of weapons and how the Army works and so forth. My brother, Frank, he had the same thing. He had naval, they call it ROTC, Reserve Training Corps. And he did the same thing at Lafayette College, which is only about 30 miles east of Bethlehem. So I saw him quite a bit. Whenever I hitchhiked home, I hitchhiked everywhere, so I hitchhiked many times over the 4 years when I was in college, back to Hempstead, where I grew up. And my parents were not too crazy about my hitchhiking, but it's a way to save money. And it's the name of the game when you're in college, is saving money, because it takes a lot of money to go to college.
So from my understanding is that you went from college to the Army? Because you had
I had some college,
so you had a class
training in
college.
At Lehigh in the Army. I had a Reserve Officers Training Corps.
So you're saying that it's neither of these. It's like you're like training while you were in college.
Yes, one class in ROTC they call it. You probably.
But then, when did you join the Army?
As soon as I graduated. So.
From college?
Yeah.
So you joined the Army after.
I had to go to classes in Houston, and so my obligation was not over when I went to Houston, and that's why I had to go back. Had to be assigned to a military camp, and that was Fort Polk in around near Slidell, Louisiana, and so the obligation was not over at that time, and the obligation stuck with me until the beginning of the Vietnamese War, and they decided I had too many second lieutenants running around, so they I just happened to be lucky. I could have been unlucky and been sent to Vietnamese and possibly not come back alive, that is. And my brother did the same thing at Lafayette College, and he actually got assigned on a destroyer, and he was the officer in charge of the gunnery. And they shot. Now, this was when he was graduated, which was like 4 years before me. The Korean War was on, and so he was the gunnery officer in charge of firing into military what you'd call them, military camps, I'll call them, military facilities along the coast of North Korea. And he fired a lot of rounds. He and his crew on the destroyer fired many, many rounds into North Korea. Mostly into military posts in North Korea. And tank farms where they stored gasoline and oil and so forth. So he says, just like I sort of enjoyed my military experience, and that's what he said too, because he got very close to his crew, probably about 5 guys on the destroyer, and they had every year they would meet at somewhere in the Northeast, and they would they did that for many, many years. So it's you get to have friends when you're in the Army or the Navy, and so they become very close friends. You know.
Okay, so that's a good place to stop in on that question.
Okay.
Now, the last question, like literally the final question.
Okay.
How did you meet Mama?
Well, yeah, I had a roommate, and we rented a room from a man that also worked at Shell.
Uh-huh.
And my roommate, of course, worked at Shell too. In fact, he was a chemist, and
was he like friends of Mama or something?
Yeah, he went to the Baptist church called Southern Baptist Church in Houston, and I went with him. And Mama was in church, a member of the church there, and so that's where I met her, and we went on. In fact, there was a group of younger people, like anywhere from 18 to 25, maybe some of them were 30 years old, and we went on trips together to various places. Like we went to, we went to Dallas. We went to some places where you could camp out in parks, and also Louisiana, and beaches in Louisiana. We visited there, slept on I'm trying to think of the word. Anyway,
So
we slept on the beach. I remember at least once, twice, maybe more. And Mama would go, we would go together with people our own age, which was
just like friends.
Early 20s, So, and within a year, let's see. Yeah, it was probably a year later that we married and lived in an apartment in Houston. And Shell had a bus that came by our apartment, and I'd grabbed it. My roommate and I would grab that bus, rode the bus together, and so then I guess it was probably a year or two later. Momo and we had, let's see, when was, I think of when, yes. She had her first child.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And wait, that brain is not awake yet.
I heard that when your first children was stillborn.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's true. So, well, that's getting fuzzy.
So that's how you and Mama met.
Yeah.
And
we moved out to Shore Acres, which is on Galveston Bay. You've been there? Probably have. You drove by. You didn't. Yeah.
I'm pretty
That's
sure.
where the pier is,
So what did you do there?
What?
What did you do there?
Oh, of course I was going to Shell every day, catching the Shell bus and then they discontinued the buses, and so I got my roommate, my past roommate, he bought a house. He got married too, and back the hurricane that occurred that year, was a bad one, and it flooded Shore Acres, and I went down there and drove down there during the hurricane.
Hello.
Hey!
We're smashing rocks.
I see.
Do you want to see?
Oh.
You gotta push it down on that.
Alright,
Here.
so.
Yeah, there you go. Now
Here,
it'll open.
sweet. Open.
Yeah.
There you go. We
Hey.
opened your geode kit.
Oh, wow.
Look at one of the ones that
Wow.
we opened already. You see that, Nico?
Yeah, that's
Cool.
neat.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Alright, so.
Do
He's
you want to
interviewing
smash
me.
some more?
Yes.
Do you want me to save some for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Alright,
keeping
so
That's
I
neat one.
think.
It is a cool one.
Hey, Papa.
Great.
So I think that's pretty much a wrap.
Oh. awesome. I was just in time.
Amazing.
That was.
He's very organized.
This
He
was
is.
a very nice interview.
Yeah.
It was.
A very nice,
interview.
fun 45 minutes.
Make
Oh,
one
good.
for me.
All right, so
Yeah, you should interview Ruby.
yeah.